Today I'm going to share with you 10 stories of me overcoming challenges in Spanish. My name is Franklin, and this is first1000hours.com. Now, if you want to skip around in this video, you're able to do that because I've included YouTube chapters. So you might be wondering, why am I talking about challenges? And I think that it's important for me to talk about challenges because in language learning, in real life, we are going to encounter challenges. So your challenge might be that you are trying to learn Spanish, but then you don't know how to roll your R's, or you're trying to learn Spanish, but you have a problem with comprehension. Maybe you go to an all Spanish environment like a church, and then you're like, I don't understand everything. And so you encounter challenges, and you think because you have challenges that you never are going to get to a higher level, so you stop. And my point of sharing with you my story, and my stories, I should say, is that I think the more challenges I can share, the less excuses that you have to stop in your language learning marathon. Because I have experience not being able to understand everything in an all Spanish environment. But guess what? I'm continuing. I've experienced not being able to roll all my R's, even know how to roll my R's. But guess what? I have continued in my Spanish journey in spite of those challenges. And I'm continuing right now. And so that's one of the reasons why I like to talk about challenges. And I started off First 1000 Hours, the first 1000 hour YouTube video, talking about challenges. And I want to share that first video that I did with you. It was called How I Learned How to Roll My R's Finally, or something like that was the title. And again, it was talking about challenges. And I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to roll my R's. I knew somebody that knew Spanish, but he did not know how to roll his R's. And I thought, okay, well, I probably am going to be like him. I'll be the guy that is learning Spanish, but I just don't know how to do it. But I'm just going to keep on learning Spanish anyway. I'm going to keep on reading and listening anyway. But it's amazing what happened. And so I'm going to share with you this video that you can see right now about how I learned how to roll my R's finally. I've been trying to learn a foreign language for a while, but I still don't know how to roll my R's. I've said many things like that before. However, I eventually learned how to roll my R's, and I want to tell you how I did it. My name is Franklin, and this is first1000hours.com. Don't give up on your language learning marathon. You can make it. You can make it your first 1000 hours. When I started my language learning marathon, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to roll my R's, because although I started and stopped learning Spanish at different points, my most serious attempt of learning Spanish started when I was 31. I was an adult. I didn't grow up learning Spanish. I had no real ambition of learning Spanish previous to age 31. And so I've looked at different videos on YouTube, and I've just observed that people really believe that when you're a child, you can mimic the language, but there's not as much kind of confidence with adults actually being able to pronounce things well. And so I was well past my childhood age, and I didn't know how to roll my R's. I've gone on YouTube on several different occasions, and I've looked at videos of people teaching others how to roll their R's. And I've tried to follow the same method that they were teaching in the videos, and every single time I failed. Now, one of the most interesting videos that I would encourage those who are still trying to roll their R's to look at is a YouTube video called How to Roll Your R's, Exercises That Work, and it's produced by the Real Russian Club channel. So this person was showing how to use a Q-tip to roll your R's. I thought it was very interesting, and I figured that I was going to actually pay $15 to go through her more detailed video after I finished reading my first Spanish book. But then something happened. One day I was in the bathroom at night, and I was just talking in Spanish to myself which I do from time to time. And I was saying something like this. Hola todos, a mí me gusta el idioma de español. Es un placer. Hablo contigo en su idioma. El idioma de español realmente es un privilegio a mí. Puso tiempo cada día en este tema. El idioma es muy guapo, es muy bello, es muy maravilloso a mí. While I was speaking to myself in Spanish that night, I actually heard myself roll my R's. And I was just amazed because I wasn't trying to do that. It just came out naturally. And that wasn't after I was watching like a YouTube video or something like that. I was just speaking and I started rolling my R's. I was just so excited about that experience. And so I hurried up and tried to record myself rolling my R's because I didn't know how long that was going to last. I still didn't really know the technique of rolling my R's that well, but I wanted to record the moment. And so I recorded myself on April 3rd of 2018, and I want you to hear the audio from that video recording. Hello everybody, I'm going to practice trilling, and I'm going to start with the word pero. That's P-E-R-R-O. In Spanish, when you have a double R, you need to trill. So here we go. Pero, pero, pero. And now I'm just going to try to just trill. Pero. That is the most trilling I've basically done in my whole life. I just started trilling a little bit tonight, and I'm really excited about that. After 20 minutes of recording myself rolling my R's, I actually forgot how to do it. And I had to continue trying to practice and figure out how to arrange my mouth and my tongue so I could roll my R's. And so I spent the next 2 days in my free time when I was driving or different times like that, learning how to roll my R's. And so I took another video of myself on April 5th of 2018. And I want you to hear the audio of that. It's been 2 days since I started seriously trilling. So I'm just going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to say pero, like I would normally say pero without the trill. And then I'm going to say pero with the trill. I'm going to try to hold the trill as much as I can. So we'll see what happens. Pero, pero. Pero, 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 pero. Now that's taken some time. I've had to practice a lot, and I'm just thankful to God that I'm learning more about trilling. I'm still going to be practicing, and I'm looking forward to being able to trill even more naturally later on. I'm going to play one last audio clip of me talking about rolling my R's, and this was done on May 6th of 2018. Hello, everybody. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was watching a YouTube video about, I believe, reasons why someone should learn Spanish. And I believe the person who was doing that was Russian, and she used the word Russo in her presentation, but she trilled when she said Russo. And I wanted to copy that. I wanted to say that too, because I had been familiar for the past 2 or 3 weeks previous to that and saying pero with a trill. So I could say things like perro or per. You know, I could hold it out and all of that. And I thought it would be easy to trill with having the R at the beginning of the word. So I tried to do it. And I started doing stuff like this. Russo, Russo. I couldn't do it. I was like wondering, if I can do perro, why can't I do Russo? But that's just the case. I was like, well, I guess I still have to learn more about trilling and rolling my R's, and I did. But I just continued to read and listen in Spanish, and I just continued to immerse myself in the language. And about 2 days ago, I was talking to myself in Spanish, and I realized, just a minute, I am not only trilling with the word perro, which I try to practice sometimes, but I was able to trill at the beginning of the sentence, which I don't think you really have to do in Spanish. Is you really trill when you have a double R. I understand that, but I am practicing, being able to use my mouth to be able to roll my R's in different situations. That's just something I like to do sometimes now. And I was able to do something like this. Russo, Russo. So I'm just going to practice doing pero and then Russo and alternate that about 3 times, and let's see what happens. Pero, Russo, pero, Russo, pero, Russo. So it's different ways that I'm able to use my mouth now to be able to make that trilling sound. And I've even practiced when, I've used the strong roll, but also I've tried to do the small trill or the soft trill. Row. So it's just really fun to be able to see how the Lord is helping me with this Spanish journey as I accustom myself to listening to more and more Spanish. And I really try to make that part of my day, and a natural fruit of being able to spend 1 hour, at least 1 hour a day in Spanish, is my pronunciation is improving, because I believe my mind has more frames of reference to be able to mimic the language. I'm not going to say I sound like a native speaker. That would be a joke, especially the people that know how I speak Spanish. But I'm learning and I'm growing, and I'm better today than I was yesterday. So I just wanted to share that with you. And if you don't know how to trill, don't worry about that too much. Just focus on being familiar with the language and really listening to the language and really spending time doing that. And over a process of time, which might, it might take some months maybe, but over a process of time, if you're putting like an hour or so most days in listening to Spanish, I believe that you will find that your pronunciation is going to get better. I think the thing sometimes we try to do is we listen to Spanish for 5 minutes and then we try to sound like a native speaker, and we might get discouraged because we don't sound like a native speaker after spending 5 minutes with the language. But I don't think that's a reasonable expectation. This is Franklin. I'll talk with you later. Bye-bye. I meant to say at the end of that audio clip that it's good to spend an hour both listening and reading things in whatever language you're trying to learn. So for me, it is good for me to at least spend 30 minutes reading and then maybe 30 minutes listening to something in Spanish. And I will go in more detail about why that strategy is such a good strategy for learning a language in future podcasts. One of the reasons why I wanted to share with you my story of how I learned how to roll my R's is because I think sometimes as language learners, we become anxious about wanting to sound more like the language that we're trying to learn. We want to sound more Spanish, or we want to sound more Russian or German, or whatever language we're trying to learn. But my main point in sharing with you my story is this: when a language ceases to be foreign, it will be much easier to mimic the language. So if I am listening to Spanish and it sounds foreign, then I need to spend more time with Spanish. And so whatever language you're trying to learn, it's the same thing. We have to spend that time with the language so that our brains can adapt to the sounds of the language that we're trying to learn. So the question is, will you ever learn how to roll your R's? I didn't think I was going to be able to do that. I just was committed to continue to learn Spanish, even if I would never learn how to roll my R's. But the question that's more important than whether or not you will be able to roll your R's or whether or not you will pronounce things better than how you are doing right now is, have you spent your first 1,000 hours primarily reading and listening to your target language? My name is Franklin, and this is first1000hours.com. So story number 2 of me overcoming challenges in Spanish are stories about me making mistakes in Spanish. I made bloopers when I was recording different Spanish videos, and I want to share those bloopers with you. I hope that you will laugh with me when you see these bloopers. And I just want to give you a little backstory about this as well. When I was trying to make this video, I was using my phone because my MacBook Pro wasn't working, and so I was editing the video on my phone. I had already done some videos that were pre-recorded, and I downloaded them and I tried to edit them, and I tried to finish the video 3 times. And on the first time I was like wondering what happened, because the editing software crashed, and so I had to do this recording and editing again, and it crashed again. And I figured out finally that my phone had run out of space, and that was the reason why it wasn't working. So I had challenges talking about challenges in Spanish, but that's okay. And so we're going to watch that video right now. Mistakes are part of the language learning process. Laugh with me as I share with you my journey. My name is Franklin, and this is first1000hours.com. Hechos 5:31 dice que no No podemos arrepentirnos. Don't give up on your language learning marathon. You can make it. You can make it your first 1,000 hours. At the end of 2017, I really wanted to create my first Spanish cooking video for my biggest YouTube channel, opensourcevegan.com. In preparation for that video, I made simple videos about my first Spanish book I was reading, El Camino de Cristo. I knew they would be short. Sometimes I would have words on the screen so my face wouldn't be shown all the time, and I could record a sentence at a time and edit out as many mistakes as possible. Más vanos son los sueños de progreso de los hombres. Vanos todos sus esfuerzos por elevar a la humanidad. Si menosprecian la única fuente de esperanza y amparo para la raza caída. Más vanos son los sueños de progreso de los hombres. Vanos todos sus esfuerzos. Más vanos son los sueños de progreso de los hombres. Vanos todos sus esfuerzos por elevar a la humanidad. Si menosprecian la única fuente de esperanza en amparo para la raza caída. Amparo. Más vanos son los sueños de progreso de los hombres. Vanos todos sus esfuerzos por elevar a la humanidad. Woo. Más vanos son los sueños de progreso de los hombres. Vanos todos sus esfuerzos por elevar a la humanidad. Más vanos son los sueños de progreso de los hombres. Vanos todos sus esfuerzos por elevar a la humanidad. Más vanos son los sueños de progreso de los hombres. Vanos todos sus esfuerzos por elevar a la humanidad. Si menosprecian la única fuente de esperanza y amparo para la raza caída. In March 2018, I actually did my first Spanish cooking video. I knew I didn't speak the best Spanish, but I knew my strengths lied in being enthusiastic, sharing simple, tested recipes that had done well on my opensourcevegan.com channel, and I wasn't afraid of making mistakes. I started the video by saying thousands of people had liked my waffle and split pea soup recipe videos, and I now wanted to share them in Spanish. Miles de personas del mundo gustan mis videos de waffles y sopa. Estas recetas son muy fácil, pero son solamente en inglés. Pero hoy en día yo quiero hacer un video de waffles y sopa en todo español. Este es Franklin con opensourcevegan.com. opensourcevegan.com. In the process of recording that intro, I made plenty of mistakes, which I put at the end of that video. Miles de personas gustan mis videos. Miles de personas gustan mis videos de waffles y sopa. Miles de personas gustan mis videos de waffles y sopa. Miles de personas gustan mis videos de waffles y sopa. Miles de personas gustan mis videos de waffles y sopas. Miles de personas del mundo gustan mis videos de waffles y sopa. Estas recetas son muy fácil, pero son solamente en español. Pero estos videos son solamente en inglés. What did I learn after making all of these mistakes? First of all, I make a lot of mistakes doing First 1,000 Hour podcasts in English to the point that I have to script myself many times to reduce the amount of mistakes I have to edit out. And English is my native tongue. I learned that I can make videos in Spanish even if I have to record only one sentence at a time. I can make videos in Spanish even if I don't know all of the Spanish words I want to say going into the recording.
Uso spray de aceite de oliva.
Uso spray de aceite de oliva. I learned how to work with subtitles using YouTube. Hola todos, este es Franklin. If you would like to read what I'm saying in English, please turn on your subtitles. Quiero leerte un bello pasaje del El Camino de Cristo, capítulo 3. Also, I learned how to display titles and descriptions in YouTube based on people's language settings. Building upon this knowledge, I was able to use Google Translate and the Google Translator toolkit to allow my video about how I learned how to roll my R's to have subtitles, titles, and descriptions in multiple languages. I was again reminded of my need to read and listen to more things in Spanish because I had a limited ability to express myself in Spanish. I'm still a believer that input is the foundation for output. I'm not going to let my mistakes stop me from being on my language learning marathon with Spanish during my first 1,000 hours. And I hope you won't let your mistakes hinder you too. My name is Franklin, and this is first1000hours.com. Arrepentirnos. So not only do I make mistakes in Spanish, I also make mistakes in English as well. And I would say there was a time in the first 1,000 hours when I was doing the first 1,000 hour YouTube channel when I was just using my phone, my old tacky phone, and I was tying that to or attaching that to my tripod with 2 rubber bands, and then I would just talk about Spanish or my journey with Spanish or something like that pertaining to first 1,000 hours. And I would upload that to YouTube without any editing. The only thing I would change would be the start and ending points of the video. So my thought process was I needed to make my intro really exciting. I needed to talk with enthusiasm. I needed to make sure there was no mistakes in that intro part. And many times I would make mistakes and I would have to re-record myself and re-record myself, but that's what I did. And so I want to share with you some of my bloopers in English so you can see that it's not just Spanish, but it's even in English. I have made mistakes and I still make mistakes in English as well. I went to an event. I went to a meeting where people from different Spanish events. I went to a meeting where people from different Spanish churches come together to worship. I went to a meeting where people from different Spanish churches worship together on a yearly basis. This was the biggest Spanish event I've ever been to in my life. Now, I know sometimes people might be a little afraid of going to an all Spanish event or an all Spanish or... I also want to share with you a little bit more of the cooking video I did in Spanish so that you can see just more than just the bloopers, but you can see a little bit of the video. When I started with that video, I didn't even know the words I would be saying. I just knew I could Google it and figure it out in the process of recording, and I did that. So I want to share with you that video right now. Este es Franklin con opensourcevegan.com. opensourcevegan.com. El primera receta es los waffles. Poner 2 tazas y media en una licuadora. Una cucharadita de sal. 2 bananos. 3 tazas de avena. Lo necesito una poquito más agua. A veces este licuador necesito un poquito más agua. Uso spray de aceite de oliva. Este es que queda. En 6 o 8 minutos más o menos, lo es listo para comer. Hermosa. Con esta receta, niños pueden cocinar para sus padres. I decided for the first book that I wanted to read, it will be El Camino a Cristo, and that is a very high-level book. It's on. The English title is called Steps to Christ, and it was very hard. It was very challenging. It was very difficult for me to do. But I didn't want to read a dumbed-down book. I wanted to read something that was going to be challenging. And I remember just trying to do the book and just going really slow, even slower than I needed to do. But then I realized that I could go further than what I thought I could do, as I was seeing an example of someone that was reading in Portuguese. This person was named Connie Warder, or is named Connie Warder, my friend now. My language motivational partner is what I've called her in some of my videos. But I saw her example of reading in Portuguese, and I realized, hey, I can actually read this book, and I decided to read it in a systematic way. And I wanted to talk to you about that and how I just got to the point, by God's grace, of finishing reading El Camino a Cristo. And that decision to read that high-level book has opened up the doors of reading for myself, and I've read thousands of other pages in Spanish since that time. So let's go ahead and watch that video right now. So, you know, at first, reading this book, that was huge. This was not a little small book. You know, this was a huge book. It was more like, it was like a book that was so big. But what happened is, you know, the Lord just blessed, and I just fought through this book. And so if you follow First 1,000 Hours, you know about that. And I don't know how many people have seen my chicken scratch when it comes to this book. I think this is really inspiring to myself. So I'm gonna get my other camera out just to show this to you, because again, the progression is 450 pages. Is not a lot of pages for myself at this moment in time. It used to be a lot of pages, but it's not at this point. You can see right here, this book, hopefully you can see it, like every single page in my first book that I was reading was something where I had to write down, I had to write things down because I didn't know these words. This was a huge book that just, I just didn't know everything. All right, and so I think you can see that, right? But, you know, even though I didn't know a lot, I didn't let that stop me. I didn't let that stop me from going through this book. And then, you know, when I actually was serious, a lot of times I was lazy, but I think when you are actually serious about something, it doesn't matter how much you don't know. I think the focus should be on what can you do. And so, you know, I like a promise in the Bible that says I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. So I need to focus on what I can do. All right, and so what I can do is, thank you, Lus. So what I could do is I could spend 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week reading this. And I went a page a day basically for the majority of this book. But guess what? I made progress. It's a lot more progress than it's a lot more progress than doing like nothing. I could look at this book and stare at it and say, oh man, I can't read it. You know? And what's that going to do? That's not doing anything. You know, but if I actually say, you know what? I'm going to take this book out, and I'm going to, instead of me making a page goal, some of us might not need to start with page goals. Maybe start with, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes, or maybe still do a page goal, but it doesn't have to be so ambitious. It might not need to be 2,000 pages. It might just need to be what it was for myself, which was I'm going to read one page. I'm going to spend, and I know it's going to take me about 30 minutes to do that, and I'm going to do that 5 days a week. Now this is the big thing about that. Okay, this is an awesome, exciting thing about doing that. If you do something like that, then that means that you can finish reading 250 pages in 2020. That's a minimum for anybody here on First 1,000 Hours. You can read at least 250 pages. Now let me explain it. Let me explain this, because you might be thinking, what are you talking about, Franklin? This is a native level Spanish book. This is not dumbed down Spanish. Why are you saying that I can do that? Okay, this is why I say that. Number one, I like what I want to say more and more here. If you can read a sentence, you can read a book. Okay, because if you can read a sentence, then you can read a paragraph, because paragraphs are composed of sentences, right? So just break it down. Don't look at this as a book. Look at this as a sentence, okay? And go sentence by sentence until you read a paragraph. Now, if you can read a paragraph, then guess what you can do? You can read a page, because pages are just composed of paragraphs, and paragraphs are just composed of sentences. So if you can read a page, you should be able to read one page in 30 minutes. Okay? And so I really spent a lot of time on this. I've talked about how I read my first book, and so I explained this, but I went through this, and it was not like I just did this. I didn't do this in a breeze. I was wondering, how in the world do people transition to reading a book? I'm like, I did do some Duolingo, but it's like, does Duolingo really prepare me for reading this book? No, I had to look up too many things, right? And so I'll just show this to you again. So if you look at this, right, I'm just looking up all this stuff, but then sometimes, what happened was I actually read, not only did I read like one page, I read 2 pages. And that I was like, whoa, I read 2 pages sometimes. Maybe on a Sunday, I was just reading like 2 pages. But the thing is, sometimes what I did is I was lazy, and I just knew that on Sunday I didn't work, so I knew that I could actually, spend my time trying to read this book if I wanted to. I'm a single guy, I don't have kids and all this stuff. But what happened is, if I just waited until Sunday, sometimes I wouldn't do anything on Sunday, and so then I'd be a week from not doing anything. So it's better to have a little bit of contact throughout the week. It adds up more. It's better to just do one page on Sunday, but then do those other pages 5 days a week, and then you come to 5 pages. And so it's cumulative. So I forgot to explain how you get up to 250 pages. And I'm just going to say this, language learning lover, I see what you said. If you can read a sentence, you can read a book. That's what I'm talking about. Books are just made of sentences. So let me explain. I didn't do all the math. And Les, I'm glad that you like that as well. Okay, so if this book right here is about, actually let me look at this. And I can show this to you. I think you can read that. It's 94 pages long. Okay? So it's 94 pages. And so let's say a book is defined as 100 pages. If you can do that thing where you're spending 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, right? You can read a 100-page book in 5 months. Okay? That means you can read another 100-page book in another 5 months. That would be 10 months. That allows you to read, basically, I said 250, my math's a little off, but basically 250 pages going slow. But if you're slow and steady, they say slow and steady wins the race. Basically going slow and steady, you can read 250 pages, no problem, all right? I would have no problem right now being able to pick up this book without any translation because I'm continuing. But I think what matters more than if you understand something or not, I think, is something that I guess different people say is like quantity quantity equals quality. That's kind of what I believe. That's kind of the philosophy of First 1,000 Hours. Like, I keep on doing videos, and guess what? I'm going to get better the more I do. And so I'm able to connect with you, right? I'm able to talk to this camera, talk to you and all this. I'm always reading and I'm always researching and learning about YouTube and all that on the back end. There's so much I could talk about that, but it's the same with language learning, right? So the more I spend with reading, the better I'm going to understand over time. But I think what happens sometimes is we start at one sentence and we're like, oh man, I don't understand. I can't do this. And we stop at one sentence. Why not keep on going? Why not read the book? Why not read the book? And after you read one book, guess what? You're going to understand a lot more, and your comprehension is going to go up, right? And then you go to the next book. Then you go to the next book, and then you go to the next book. The main point I was saying about starting with this book and trying to read and all of this, what happens is that opens up other opportunities to the point where now I could take classes that are not even related to language learning, all in Spanish, and be able to function in an all Spanish environment. But guess what I had to do? I had to first do this. I had to first pick up a book and read it by God's grace. And then, I go into another one and another one. Even before I started the first 1,000 Hour YouTube channel, I still had goals and ambitions for myself in Spanish. And so I had some reading goals for myself. And instead of me just making goals in January and forgetting about them or not following up with them, I still wanted to be committed to some of the goals I had throughout the year. And I want to talk to you about one of the goals I had and how I was getting down to the wire, down to 2018, and what happened at the end of the year. I should mention that before I did this video, I was trying to fix my MacBook Pro. My MacBook Pro was not working, and I had bought a part to try to fix it, and I had installed that part, and I thought maybe this was going to fix it, and it didn't fix it. But I realized it didn't, and I was like, you know what? I have a commitment that I want to do 52 videos for First 1,000 Hours. And now my MacBook Pro is not working, but I'm going to continue anyway. So what I did is I got my old phone, and I put this phone on my tripod with 2 rubber bands, and at that time I could live stream straight from my phone using YouTube's app, even though my channel was very small. And I went ahead and did a live stream, even though it was tacky. I'm like, I'm going to get this video done no matter what today. And I live streamed about having a big goal for 2019. And that's kind of been my attitude for First 1,000 Hours and doing the channel. I'm like, you know what? I encounter challenges and all that, but I'm going to keep on going. And that's been my perspective also with Spanish as well. I finished reading El Camino de Cristo in April of 2018. And then I decided in almost the end of the year that I didn't just want to read 450 pages, but I wanted to read 6 Spanish books. Maybe it was in half of the year or something like that in 2018. And I was getting down to the end of 2018, and I still had not read 6 books. And I wanted to do that before I went to a youth conference in Houston. I think that youth conference started, if I remember correctly, on December 28th. And I was hoping to finish my 6th book by December 28th, because I knew that the conference was going to be very busy and I wouldn't really have that much time to read. I was not able, unfortunately, to finish my 6th book at that time. So I still managed to find time. I got up earlier so that I could finish this book, because I was thinking in my mind, I am not going to go into 2019 and not read 6 books. And I remember just getting up early, trying not to disturb my roommate or whatever in the hotel. And I got up early so that I could finish reading the book. And I was able to do that probably about, like 3 days before 2018 ended. And to me, that's very significant, because I want to challenge myself. I don't want to be in the same position or the same area that I was in when I started the year. In 2019 as well, I still had some reading goals, and it was getting down to the wire again. It was getting down to the end of 2019, and I want to share with you what I did at the end of 2019 in terms of my reading goals. So we'll look at that right now. So the question is, how many pages did I read in Spanish in the fourth quarter of 2019? And so this is how many pages I read. I read approximately 365 pages. And so the other question is, how many pages did I read in Spanish in 2019? And the total amount of pages I read was approximately 1,480 pages. And I remember as I was getting ready to be prepared for this report, I was thinking, oh man, I have read two books. I read Hogar Cristiano, and I also read El Deseado de Todas las Gentes, but I wanted to read some smaller books as well. And so one of them was Esperanza para la Familia, or Hope for the Family. And then also there was another one, the English title is called Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing, about the Beatitudes and other things about about Christ. But the thing is, I had not finished those books, and it was like probably around like December 20th. I had already started reading them, but I was like, you know what? I am not going to finish 2019 without finishing those two books. And so I was able to finish the second book this morning. So I was able to finish reading 4 books, and all of those 4 books added up to approximately 1,480 pages. I was asked to translate some Spanish bookmarks, and I said yes, but I really didn't think I was capable of doing that. And I have to share with you that story. And at the end, after that story is finished, I want to talk to you about how accepting that challenge has really been amazing for myself and has opened up opportunities for other people to learn Spanish as well. So the first story was last year, and someone asked me to translate bookmarks into Spanish, Bible-based bookmarks into Spanish. I said yes. Months went by. I didn't do anything. The person followed up with me and said, hey, Franklin, what's happening with the bookmarks? And I didn't know what to say. Now, what had gone on in my mind during those months is, just a minute, I can't do this. Number one, I'm not a native speaker in the target language. I'm not a native speaker of Spanish. I am not Google Translate. Google Translate does a better job than me. What in the world can I contribute to this project? And so I WhatsApped Connie, and I was saying the same things basically to Connie. And I also said, Connie, I think I need another year to learn Spanish. I'm not ready for this. I'm not a native speaker. What can I do? I can't do anything. I need another year. And so I talked to Connie. She's my language motivational partner. She has done a translation project before. She translated a book from Portuguese into English. And so I thought she might agree with me. But then she shared with me on WhatsApp something that was something I needed to hear. And I believe that this is something that you need to hear as well. This is what she said to me. No, my friend, you need to step up now. Oh man, that kind of was challenging. I wanted to wait until next year. Now, the thing is, if I had waited until next year, what would have happened? I think I might have felt like, yeah, I was still a beginner or still not good enough. And then I might have said, oh, I actually need to wait until the following year to do it. And then when I got to that point, I might say, oh, actually, I'm not ready yet. I need to wait another year. But she said, no, my friend, you need to step up now. I would take each English phrase, write it in Spanish the best you can, then run your Spanish through Google Translate and see what the English looks like to you. Make all the necessary tweaks. Then when you're all finished, show it to the nearest Spanish speaker and see what they think. There are times in life when we think we aren't ready, but we need to step up and do it anyways. This is very important to remember in language learning. Language learning is not about feeling comfortable. People that feel comfortable are at low levels in language learning. If you want to get to the next level, you have to get out of your comfort zone. It's like required, a required mentality to have in language learning. She said this as well. Nobody expects you to write the next classic Spanish novel. These are short Bible things to write. God will help you too. I never thought I was ready to speak Portuguese, but finally one day I decided I was now a speaker of it, and it was time to start acting like it. You are a speaker of Spanish, not just a learner anymore. My definition is when you've had your first conversation. Look at tiny kids. Even if they are babbling along, nobody would say they aren't native speakers of their own languages. They just aren't very good yet. It's important to think of yourself as a speaker now because you'll start acting like it. So I had a decision to make. Was I just going to look at myself as a perpetual beginner, or was I going to start looking at myself as a speaker? I chose to look at myself as a speaker, and this is what I told Connie, or wrote back to her. I told the person with the bookmark project that I still want to do that, and I asked him to give me until 11:59 p.m. Sunday to finish the first translation. So thanks for the encouragement to put my feet in the waters of translation. This is a big step, but I think it's a needed step because I believe it'll help me grow and help others in the process. So I prayerfully undertook the project, and I realized as I did the project that there were things that I could contribute. Before I get into that, I want to let you know how I did this. I just basically took Connie's advice, and what I did is I got the bookmark, I copied and pasted the English translation into Google Translate. I tried to look at the translation to make sure it looked as good as it could look from my understanding of Spanish. And then I have a network of people I know from the United States and at least 2 other countries that I use for this project. And they would give me critiques or whatever, or say, oh, it looks okay, or whatever, or they might say, hey, this word is better than the word that Google Translate suggested or whatever. So that was helpful. Then I shared that with the person that was over the project, and then we might have time for or room for another iteration of corrections or something like that. But I was able to do the project, and what I realized is I have things that Google Translate doesn't have. For instance, Google Translate doesn't have a network of Spanish friends that it can help to do a translation of a Bible-based bookmark. Google Translate also isn't a Christian, and it does not have a personal relationship with Christ or the Bible that can help with the translation project. So, and also Google Translate doesn't know about different websites that can go at the end of the bookmark that are going to be relevant for Spanish speakers to know more about maybe the end time prophecy of Daniel 2 or health. So there are things that I could do that Google Translate couldn't do, but it's good to still use technology as much as possible to help facilitate the process of translation. So I am thankful for Google Translate. So my question to you is this: are you looking at yourself as a perpetual beginner? So if you are doing that, then like I said, you will only get to so far in your language learning growth, because in order to grow, you have to have challenges, you have to have struggles, you have to have difficulties, you have to get out of a comfort zone. That's the only way to grow in language learning, in my opinion. Or do you look at yourself as a speaker? That might not mean that you're a native speaker or looking at yourself as a native speaker. I don't want you to lie to yourself, but I also want you to challenge yourself. And so a speaker does not shrink from challenges or difficulties, but takes them on so that he or she can get to the next level. So if you look at yourself as a perpetual beginner, this is what I want you to do. I want you to give yourself 2 months to continue to look at yourself as a perpetual beginner. Then after that, you can't use that as an excuse anymore. There are people that have been on language learning programs for like 1 year or 2 years, maybe even 5 years or more, or they might have not used any apps or something like that, but they're still like using these beginner books or something like that. And it's just something that might be comforting to them to look at themselves as a perpetual beginner, but then at the same time, it's kind of frustrating because they expect to get to a higher level, but you can't get to that higher level without a challenge, okay? As I sought to trust God, work with other Spanish speakers, and just seek to do the best I could on that project, there are many people that have been blessed by those Spanish bookmarks. But it also opened up other opportunities for myself to be of service to others. Let me explain. in that Spanish bookmark project, I work with Spanish speakers, like I just said, right? And so one of them was Becky, and I really like working with Becky. She has a good work ethic. She seeks to do things to the honor and glory of God, and it was just a good experience working with her. And so we did the bookmarks in 2019. Let's fast forward to 2020. I was asked by one of my friends if I could be a Spanish teacher. And when I had done First 1,000 Hours, I had said many times, I am not a Spanish teacher. Now my friend is asking me to be a Spanish teacher. That was unexpected. I was not thinking to do that on this channel or anything like that. But since I had already accepted the challenge in 2019 of doing the bookmarks, I realized that I don't need to shrink from challenges. You know, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And so I said, okay, I need to pray about this, but I think I probably will do this. And then I also called up my friend Becky, and I asked her as well, hey, Becky, can you help me in this project? And so she said, yes, she would. And so it was really nice. And so there's a lot of different things we had to do in terms of planning and behind the scenes, trying to think about how can we actually do a class for these children that's going to be helpful to them and help them understand Spanish, you know, in a way that actually is practical. And so, you know, I was able to write up a true story from my life and different things like that and illustrate it in a way that I thought could be comprehensible. And then Becky went through different training from looking at some First 1,000 Hour videos and another video. And even Connie, my friend Connie, was able to show her how she has done some of her English as a second language class. And she, you know, anyway, there's different things that Becky did. And then she was able to lead out in that live class for these children. And I was actually able to experience that as well. I saw it live and it went very well. I was really happy about that. But then we ran into another challenge. We had scheduling issues, and I was like, oh man, we did this class, put in all this type of effort, and still we have this challenge. But what happened is because we had a scheduling problem, that challenge actually turned into a blessing, because then my friends suggested to me, hey, why don't you look into creating an on-demand class? And I thought about that. Okay, we can do an on-demand class, and then that allows people to be able to look at that class and have a flexible schedule, because I know here at First 1,000 Hours, there are people that are watching these videos in the United States, but also around the world. And so if I was thinking, or if we were thinking just to do live classes, then we would be missing out on an opportunity to serve people that maybe are in different time zones that we cannot accommodate. And so doing an on-demand class allows things to be it allows it to be scalable and serve more people. And so what we have been doing is developing a mini course, a mini Spanish comprehension course. And you can find that at comprehendspanish.com. Now, at the time of this recording, we just have one class that you can look at, and you'll be able to look at that class until Thanksgiving 2020 for free. So I really recommend that you go to comprehendspanish.com. Now, if you're looking at that after that time period, there probably will be a sign-up page for you to be able to get access to that that course when it comes out, if you would like, or the course might already be out. So you'll just have to go to that website to find out, or you can also check the link in the description of this video if there's anything that changes. I should mention that our Spanish class, as well as our full Spanish comprehension mini course, is family-friendly content for people of various ages. So we're going to go into the next challenge in the next video, and that was where I was talking about how I volunteered to translate for, I said in the video, one person, but it was really two people. And I found out that there was someone else that was there that translated better than me, and I was just feeling so discouraged, and I was like, why am I here? What am I doing? And all of this stuff. But I realized from that challenge, after I assessed the situation, that the greatest language learner is going to be a servant. If you want to learn a lot in Spanish, then you have to focus on being helpful. And I want to unpack that story a lot more by letting you watch that video right now. I volunteered to be a volunteer Spanish translator for someone who who I believe needed some help. And the day came where I was supposed to help the person, and I did some things in Spanish, and when it came down to the end of me doing things, someone else was called in, and that person took over and did a lot better job than me. So I was in the room and I was thinking, just a minute. I mean, why am I here? Why am I trying to do Spanish translation? There's someone that's a lot better than me, and I want to talk more about that experience, talk more about my feelings. My name is Franklin, and this is first1000hours.com. So this is part one of a series where I want to talk about struggles in doing translation, and I think that you might find this a little interesting. Maybe you can already relate to the story, but first of all, I want to say that I was not trying to impose myself and just talk in Spanish just because I know some things in Spanish. There was someone that I thought needed some help. This person prefers to speak in Spanish, and so the person is really happy that I know a little bit of Spanish, or I can help with Spanish. And so I had asked if that person wanted me to go along with the person, and then the person said yes. And then I also asked the place that we would be going to if they needed help with Spanish. And I told them I'm not an expert in Spanish or anything like that, but they didn't have somebody at that time that knew Spanish, so they said, yeah, you can come. And so I decided to go and to translate. And so I wouldn't say that I did a perfect job or anything like that, but I felt pretty comfortable for a lot of what we were doing. I did have some struggles, I did have some challenges and all of that, and obviously someone was called to come and basically complete the job that knew Spanish. Now, I didn't know that that person was there. If I had known the person was there, I wouldn't have even been there, first of all. And secondly, the person is not always at that place. So even though I called the place and asked if they needed help, that they didn't know at that time that there would be this person that would be coming that basically I probably was a native Spanish speaker. And so, immediately I was thinking in my mind, why am I here? How can I really contribute or do anything? Because there's someone that's better than me that needed to be there. I'm not saying that person didn't. If I was in the situation of determining if someone who should be there, I would have definitely said that person should have been there. I have nothing against that person. I was more so thinking about myself, thinking about, kind of like, why am I learning Spanish when there's so many other people that do a better job than me? And especially, why was I there doing the translation when there's someone obviously that has a better grasp on Spanish in the first place? And I want to, I guess, open this up for conversation. What would go through your mind if you were trying to help someone else with Spanish, and then there's another person that comes that does 5-10 times better than you? What would be going through your mind? I would like to know in the comment section of this video what you would say to that, and then also what would you say to someone like myself that just went through that experience. I shared with my language motivational partner about how I was doing a volunteer translation job and how someone else had to be called in to complete the job. And I was thinking, why am I here and all of this? And so I shared that with her, and then she gave me her response. And I think that any language learner would like to hear what her response is. So I'll be sharing some of that with you, as well as some of my thoughts about that and a few other things. My name is Franklin, and this is first1000hours.com. But one thing that Connie Warner shared with me is she said that attitude determines altitude. And I really believe in that, especially here at First 1000 Hours. And I know that there are at least two components to learning a language. You need to know the language itself. For instance, English is different than Russian, that's different than Chinese, that's different than Spanish. But then you also need to know how to learn a language. So here at First 1000 Hours, I really try to focus on how to learn a language. And one of the principles of how to learn a language is having the right mentality, or a mentality of a successful language learner. And so our mentality is important because it's going to help us know how to deal with challenges. And so if we have the right mentality or the right attitude, then we can get to a high level in the language. And so this is what else she said. She said, you have to focus on all the things you did right. And so one of the things I did right is I accepted a challenge. And that was a challenge to do a volunteer translation or interpreting job. So what happens with that is I didn't exactly know what the people were going to say when I was doing this translation job. And I think in the previous video I said it was for one person. It was really for a family. And so I didn't know what the words were going to be, but I put myself in this challenge, this difficult thing. And for example, it was interesting in the volunteer translation job that I had to say estrella, and estrella means star. So I had to actually use that. And who would think that I would be using the word star for my situation? But I did do something like that. And I think it's important to put myself in these challenges because I remember watching a video that said it's in the challenges that you actually grow. Let's say if I was trying to be a weightlifter and I wanted to lift about 300 pounds, and that was like my goal in weightlifting, and maybe I wanted to be able to bench press 300 pounds, and I don't know, after weightlifting for, let's say, 2 or 3 years. And so I start with 10 pounds, and I do it, and I keep, I just do this, like it's not that big of a deal. So then I go to 15 pounds, and I'm just lifting up the weights with, both my hands or whatever. And I go to 25 pounds and I go to 40 pounds and I start bench pressing, and I'm bench pressing 50 pounds. And I just stay at 50 pounds. I never get past 50 pounds. And then after a while, it becomes pretty easy. I'm like, oh, yeah, I can do this. I can handle this. And then the day comes for me to bench press 300 pounds after the 3rd year. Do you think I'll be ready for bench pressing 300 pounds when I've only been practicing with 50-pound weights? And obviously, the likelihood of me being able to do that, especially because I don't do weightlifting in real life, I can guarantee you that I'm going to have some challenges. And so in language learning, I think it's good to continually be growing and pushing myself and making things a little bit harder for myself, because the things that I thought were hard at one point are going to get easier if I'm continually challenging myself. Now, I thought something was pretty nice that the language learning lover said on my YouTube channel. She said about my experience, she shared what she would think if she had my experience. She said, honestly, the old me would have felt embarrassed and insecure. The new me would view it as a fantastic language opportunity. And I really like that, what she said there, especially the last part and even the first part, because I like the fact that she had a mind shift or a mentality shift. And I believe that language learning lover, you're going to go very far in Spanish, especially because you have this shift of mentality. And this is another thing that I did right. I put myself in an opportunity to have a fantastic language learning opportunity. And I believe it was kind of tailor-made for myself. I didn't even have to pay for anything. It was free. It was real life. And it was helping me to grow. All right, I want to kind of move on here. One other thing I should say is I was able to get to know better Spanish-speaking people in my area, which I think is good to have those type of connections. And one other thing Connie said is, she said, also think back to where you were a year ago to see your progress. I do this on holidays. Languages are a lifetime pursuit. And so if I look back on where I was last year, for the whole year, I didn't attempt to be a volunteer interpreter. So I did something new this year, and I'm very happy that I did that. And so I thought that even this time, it was even better for me to even attempt to do things like this. And I know I'm just in the beginning stages of being an interpreter. I've had a dream of potentially being able to translate people's sermons and things like that in the future. I would like to actually go on a mission trip to a Spanish-speaking country, and I think about the one I would like to go to, and I'm thinking, oh man, it would be nice to really get to a high level in Spanish. I don't have a goal necessarily of having a job being an interpreter, but I want to get to a high level in Spanish and be able to do whatever I want with that language. And one of the things which would be nice would be to be an interpreter. So I had that idea and that dream and all that stuff, and I would talk to myself and my duplex and in Spanish or whatever, and just kind of imagine being an interpreter. But then I got a real life situation where I was able to put that in practice. And I believe that if I continue to practice, I will get better and better at that. And one other thing Connie said is also I replay conversations back in my mind over and over again, and I imagine doing them again. And this time I fill out my sentences better and get my conjugation and so on. It's actually a sports psychology technique. You imagine the perfect golf swing over and over again. It's mental practice. Then when you actually do it again, you'll see improvement. I have the habit of having imaginary conversations all day long. If I'm driving, I pretend I'm giving a Brazilian a tour. I pass a mailbox. I imagine explaining to them what it is and how the U.S. mail system works, for example. I also replay real conversations and especially focus on what I had trouble with. I call that English brain lock, when the Portuguese just vanished for a second. All this is mental rehearsal. Your thoughts really do impact the rest of your body. If you imagine yourself having confident, easy conversations, eventually that will become reality. And I'm wondering, has anybody ever tried to have some type of mental rehearsal like Connie Warner was explaining? I know I opened up my experience, last week and was asking for to have a conversation with you and things like that. And I didn't have anybody that talked about these mental rehearsals. So I thought that was kind of unique that Connie mentioned that. But I think there's a lot to be gained from going back over in the mind and just imagining yourself doing better in the experience that you had with using your target language. So I wanted to let you know about that. And this, to me, goes along with a text in the Bible that is in Proverbs that says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And that's in Proverbs 23, and I believe verse 7. And let me look at this. It says something else here. Connie also said this: don't let other people intimidate you. Oh, Susie over there is perfect at English and Spanish. That comparison doesn't do anything to help you. It is only helpful for education. I think of languages as an internal conversation with myself. Then I don't worry what other people are saying or doing because I'm in my own private world, so to speak. And so that is extremely helpful to me to remember. And as I was talking with other people online as well about my experience and just looking at the comments on YouTube and other places, I came to the conclusion, like, what is better? Having a bragging right of saying, yeah, I was able to do my first volunteer translation job at a different place other than my work or whatever, and I was able to just not have any help, and I just did everything right the first time and everything like that, and have that mentality in my mind to the point where that's what I focus on. And then when someone else comes in, I'm so distracted that I'm not able to still capitalize on language learning opportunities that were still there even though I was not speaking. Or should I have the mindset, I'm here to serve, I'm here to help, and whatever I can do to help, that's what I need to do. If that means I speak, then I speak. If that means I need to be quiet, I need to be quiet. If that means I just need to observe, I observe. And I think that would be better. And because this is what the language learning lover said as one of her ideas that she would have thought about, or she would think to do in that situation. She said, I would pay close attention and write down what I learned. I would probably even get the contact info of the person they brought in and ask if I could shadow in the future. Now, what if I had thought like that? I was not thinking like that. I was so into myself, which was crazy, that I didn't think about, hey, maybe I could have a potential opportunity to come back and to do something in the future by even getting the contact information of that person. And even if I didn't do that, I could more easily, if I had that more of a helpful mindset at that moment, I could have more easily been thinking and listening to what she was saying to the family, and then that could help in the future when I would be even replaying the conversation in my mind, or doing things like that in the future. So I thought that suggestion by Language Learning Lover was good. And so what happens when I compare myself, or when I did compare myself, obviously, is for that moment or for that time period, and even I would say even outside of that, when I was thinking, oh man, why am I here and all this, this was kind of taking me off of the language learning marathon. Because what did it do? Did it help me learn more Spanish? Did it help me run a little bit faster in my language learning marathon? No. And so it's true what Connie said, it's good for education. And so what I interpret that to mean is that I can look at people for inspiration. I can look at a person like the person that came in and was called in and say, oh, wow, look at her speak Spanish so well. That's amazing. There was a point when she was not like that. And this is who I could become. And I can look at people maybe online, or you can look at myself, and I talk about difficulties and struggles. You can say, okay, well, I see that person's mistakes. Let me learn from that. Let me not do the same mistake that Franklin did or someone else did on YouTube. Let me gain education from people that I look at. But I only compete against myself. Now, that shouldn't be an easy competition. You shouldn't just strive to just have something easy because you're competing against yourself. Again, you need to challenge yourself. You need to be continually growing. I need to be continually growing. And when we challenge ourselves like that, then we can be comfortable being in the presence of even native level speakers in our target language and not being intimidated, because we know that our language learning marathon isn't against them, it's against ourselves. Okay, let me just continue to move on here. And one other thing Connie Warner said is you want to surround yourself with native speakers as much as possible. They will always be better than you, but in the process, it raises your game. And I remember when I went to a meetup, a language learning meetup, it was interesting. It was helpful to a certain degree in some of the things that we did. But I wasn't with native speakers at that time. I was just talking to different people, and we were talking in Spanish, but we still had to grow. But I saw a big contrast when I went to a Spanish church, and I'm like, whoa, this is different because there was a higher level. The service was not for anybody that didn't, it was not designed for people that didn't speak Spanish. People are welcome to come that don't speak Spanish, but it wasn't designed for them. So it was at a very high level. And so definitely it raised my game, because the time that I was spending in that Spanish church was, I think it counted more than the meetup, because it was just so much more difficult. And now Connie has really followed her own advice as far as being with native speakers. She spends a lot of time, reading and listening to things in Portuguese, and actually she's learning German as well. But what was interesting last year, I believe, is that she was a bridesmaid in a Portuguese wedding. How many people can say that they were so into their target language, and not only that, but actually developing connections with people that were speaking their target language, that they were able to be a bridesmaid or a bridegroom. So that is pretty amazing that happened for her. And And so what I get from that as well is that I need to, go to a Spanish church from time to time. The last 3 weeks, I've been going in the afternoon, on Saturday afternoon, to a Spanish-speaking church, and so that has been helpful for myself. And I will do that from time to time. I have my main church that's an English-speaking church that I go to, but there's a church just down the road, and so it's like, why don't I take advantage of that opportunity? I've probably been to that church, I would say maybe like 25 times or 30 times. I don't know. I'm losing track of the amount of times I've been there, but a lot of those times were last year. But now it's a new year, and I have a little bit more time where I can spend at that church, especially because the days are long and different things like that. And they have a service that doesn't really conflict with the service that I go to. I'm at my English speaking church, so I'm like, okay, let me take advantage of that opportunity. And then also I have online language partners. I would say a main language learning partner, but I have other language learning partners, and I have connections that I can have with people that are native Spanish speakers. And I need to continue to take advantage of that, because again, that's going to raise my game. I don't depend on other people. I can still read on my own. I still can do other things on my own, and so I can still utilize opportunities even if I'm not speaking to anybody. And a lot of times, most of the time, I'm doing things on my own. But then, it's good to continue to talk to people in real life, and get to a higher level like that. I did want to say something else about challenge. I forgot to mention that some people's challenge is, it could be different. Like my marathon is different than your marathon. Your challenge might be, you might need to read a book in your target language for the first time. You might say, that makes me feel uncomfortable. But when are you going to pick up a weight that's heavier than 50 pounds? Or it might be that you need to watch something for an hour in your target language, and you might not understand everything. But hey, those things are going to get you to a higher level. It's going to get easier, especially if you combine both of them together, reading and listening. I'm telling you, it's very helpful. I've already talked a lot about that in other videos that you can see on this channel. But I just wanted to share with you some of the things that my language motivational partner shared with me that I thought would be helpful. My friend Connie Warner's example of learning some of Portuguese by going to a Portuguese church stressed to me the importance of going to a Spanish church to continue in my language learning marathon with Spanish. And so I went to a Spanish church, but I encountered challenges. I didn't understand everything. I didn't comprehend everything. But I want to share with you my mindset after going to that church and just some of my experience going to that church. So we'll watch a video about that right now. I went to a Spanish church June 6, 2018. In the past, I went there to hear an English speaker, but this time the prayer meeting was in all Spanish. I want to share my reaction to going to that Spanish church from a series of audio recordings I did that same night, June 6, 2018, while I was driving home from prayer meeting. I went to the Spanish church today, and I would say that my maximum comprehension level was probably around a 30%. And it probably fluctuated from a 20 to 30%, and sometimes it was less than that. I think it depended on who was speaking and also how they were speaking, because I went to prayer meeting, and so people were giving their testimonies and all of that, and some people spoke very softly. So I think even if they were speaking in English, I still would have a problem understanding them, but it was really compounded because they were speaking in Spanish. And I might be a little hard of hearing, I don't know, but when people are speaking very softly, it's kind of hard. So instead of me being at my computer, using my headphones and just turning up the volume, I couldn't do that. So I tried to listen as closely as I could. After the singing, giving of thanks, and prayer requests, there's some praying, and then there was a sermon. I, at first, probably understood about 20%, but then it went up to 30% as he continued speaking. So I think I could at least share some of the concepts of what he was saying. I don't know everything he was saying, but yeah, real life,
listening and all that in real time in a real environment where there's not a computer, it's a little bit more difficult, but I think that I definitely was more prepared than I have been at any other stage of my life to be in that church and to listen. I did participate just a little bit. They were asking for song requests, and I asked for them to sing Más Allá del Sol, which is a really nice song that I really like, so they were able to do that. I think I could have done a better job of speaking in Spanish because people asked me, do I speak Spanish? And I answered them in English, and I said I know a little bit of Spanish. So I should have answered them in Spanish because I'm at a Spanish-speaking church and they're speaking Spanish. I don't want to say that I know more than I do. I'd rather say less than I know than more. But I think I just should have tried to speak a little bit more in Spanish. And then at the end of the message and all of that, when everybody was leaving, I talked just a little bit, but then it's like, what do I do? I'm not a member there or anything like that. I don't know people, and so I try to hang around just for a little bit, but then I didn't know that many people. I could have made more of an effort to talk, but I ended up just leaving probably after about 3 minutes after everything finished. And I know the conversation time, that's the time to really, I guess, practice Spanish and talk and all that. And I think I need to be a little bit more outgoing. I normally am outgoing, but I normally make more of an effort to talk to new people when I'm at my own church, but it's like I'm at my own environment, which this wasn't my own environment. People did come up to me a little bit and talk to me and all of that, but at the end, it was just a little bit different. I do believe that I probably will get more interaction with people if I continue to go. I think people also need time to kind of figure out what I'm doing. I am just now starting to read the Bible in Spanish. When I was reading Isaiah today, Isaiah 6, I was just trying to follow along with the person who was delivering the sermon, but I really wanted to look at my English side too to figure out what am I reading. But I didn't have enough time, really, if I was going to really follow what he was saying, and then also, just listen to other things he was saying.
Those were my real and raw thoughts after going to that Spanish prayer meeting. I don't want you to be discouraged by listening to those audio recordings. So if you go to a Spanish prayer meeting like I did, you have to remember that that might only be 1 hour. You still have 999 hours left in your language learning marathon. So don't be discouraged when you might have not even hardly started the marathon. I had to recognize that going to that Spanish church was like going to the Olympics. I wasn't with Spanish learners. I was with people who had known Spanish for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 70 years, or maybe even 80 years or more. This church service didn't consist of dumbed down Spanish. It was a service for native level speakers. Going to the Spanish church inspires me to read and listen to more things in Spanish because in order for me to thrive in this all Spanish environment, I have to come up higher. I have to reach a higher level. I left this church challenged to read and listen to much more native Spanish materials. I one day dream of going on a short-term overseas trip to another Spanish-speaking country. I was thankful that I was able to go to a Spanish church, which is a free, immersive Spanish environment that doesn't have the heavy travel expense. As for making conversations with unfamiliar people after church service was done, I could have smiled and said, "Hola, mucho gusto." I was too busy thinking about everything I didn't know when I forgot the basics of conversation. I went to that Spanish church the following week, and I've even spent more time at that Spanish church. One of the most disappointing things for me when I was first going to that Spanish church was that I had gone to that church 4 times in a row, and on my 4th time, I had the least amount of comprehension. I was thinking I should be going forward, but I'm going backward, and it's like, what am I doing? Why can't I understand this Spanish? And so I want to share with you my story, and because I went to that church, I had a challenge, and then I realized, from my friend, my friend gave me encouragement and all of that. My friend's encouragement has helped other people. And so because I stepped up to a challenge and then I was able to learn from that challenge. Other people have been able to benefit from my challenge and my struggle, and I want to share that with you today. So let's watch that video as well.
I did go to the Spanish church tonight, and I would say that out of the 4 times I've been to that church recently, this was the hardest time to understand things in the sermon. The volume was good. Actually, it was a little bit too loud, I believe, at least for part of the time. But I was just getting words here and there, but I didn't really get the context of what was being said.
I recorded that audio clip June 27th, 2018, right after I had left the all Spanish prayer meeting. After an experience like that, did I really believe I was making substantial progress in my language learning marathon? I want to answer that question and more in this podcast. My name is Franklin, and this is First1000hours.com. Don't give up on your language learning marathon. You can make it. You can make it through your first 1,000 hours. I want to put my 4th Spanish prayer meeting experience into the bigger context of my language learning journey. So in 2017, I completed my Duolingo Spanish tree. I had a language learning partner, and we did a language exchange on WhatsApp almost every day for about 9 months or more. And we did a language exchange where one day we would WhatsApp all in English, and another day we would WhatsApp all in Spanish. This person was from a Spanish-speaking country. I also started to read my first Spanish book. I started listening to things in Spanish. I occasionally watched some things in Spanish. I didn't do it a lot, but I occasionally watched things in Spanish. In 2018, I started watching Spanish YouTube videos with Spanish subtitles. And then in April of 2018, I finished reading my first Spanish book, and I started reading my second one. So I did all of these things, and then I went to the Spanish church, and on my 4th time, I had the worst level of comprehension. So the question is, did I make progress? I think some people probably would say no. If I go to a church 4 times in a row and I have the worst level of comprehension, that isn't progress. I think some people would say that. But I think going to an immersive environment in your target language requires a certain mindset. It requires a high tolerance with the unknown. So at this stage in my language learning journey, I'm not primarily defining my progress by whether or not I understand everything in Spanish. I have yet to finish my first 1,000 hours with Spanish, so that's more of my concern at this point. I believe that one of the biggest indicators of whether or not we're going to really progress in our language learning journey is based upon the amount of time we spend with it. And I want to talk more about that in a future podcast. So the outcome of whether or not we're going to complete our language learning marathon isn't determined by one step. So I could really just base my whole experience of learning Spanish based on the fact that I didn't comprehend a lot in my 4th time at that Spanish church. But I believe that progress in language learning is determined by a series of movements forward over a 1,000 hour period of time. For example, if people decide to spend only 0.05% of their first 1,000 hours going to a prayer meeting in their target language, that means they have to go to 5 prayer meetings, assuming that those prayer meetings are 1 hour long. If people decide that, no, they don't want to do that, they want to spend a little bit more time, so they dedicate 1% of their first 1,000 hours going to those type of prayer meetings, then that means they have to go to 10 prayer meetings. But if they decide to spend 5% of their first 1,000 hours going to these prayer meetings, that will mean that they will have to go to 50 prayer meetings. So I think that when we have that mentality that we need to spend our first 1,000 hours with our target language before we really assess how well we're doing in the language, then we can more so enjoy the journey. But I think it's still good to celebrate the little victories. Sometimes we are so focused on running this language learning marathon that we forget how far we've come. In 2017, I had thought about going to a Spanish church. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to get to this level in my Spanish, and then in October, I'm going to go to a Spanish-speaking church. October came and went, and then November came and went, and December came and went. And I did not go to a Spanish-speaking church one time in 2017. So in 2018, up to that point, I had gone to a Spanish speaking church 4 times in a row. And for this, I can celebrate. I think it's very important to recognize and be excited about little victories in our language learning marathon. That's why I want to share with you Connie Warner's thoughts on listening comprehension. She is my language motivational partner. She is my mentor when it comes to language learning. I mean, she has learned Portuguese to a very high level in adulthood. And she's done that because she is very laser focused on using Portuguese. And so she has gone to a Portuguese church for over a year and been committed to going, even though she didn't understand every single thing she was hearing in that church. And progressively, as she committed to investing the time in Portuguese, not only in that church, but even in her daily life, her understanding and comprehension of Portuguese has accelerated greatly. And she has been an encouragement to me. I shared with her my experience of going to the Spanish church for the 4th time and having the worst level of comprehension. And she shared with me these thoughts on listening comprehension that I'm going to read to you. Before I read this, I just want to point out the reason why I think it's so important or so vital for me to share these notes on listening comprehension. I believe you can go to a church in your target language and feel very discouraged if you don't understand 80 to 100% of what has been said. But it really depends on your mentality. You can either believe that you are only making progress if you understand 80 to 100% of what is being said, or you can celebrate your little victories of listening comprehension on your first 1,000 hours of your language learning marathon. This is what Connie Warner shared with me. She wrote, I think there are stages of listening comprehension, and they can go from 0 to 10 during the same speech given by the same speaker. I don't have them all labeled yet, but I think it goes like this. Stage 0. I don't understand anything. It's just noise. I may or may not be aware of word breaks. Stage 1 is basically noise, but I do catch the occasional single word, but I'm not confident if I even understood that right. Stage 2. I'm catching more individual words, and sometimes I get 2 or 3 words in a row, which makes me super excited. Stage 3, I'm regularly getting 2 or 3 or even 4 words in a row, but there are too many gaps in between to make much sense overall. Stage 4, I'm basically getting most of the words, but they are coming at me like baseballs being thrown. I just get one word at a time and forget the previous word, making it impossible still to get the overall meaning. Stage 5, my memory is improving, so I get the overall meaning of full sentences, except for the regular occurring pesky missed word. I try harder to understand because I'm so close, but as soon as I start straining, I miss even more. I have to stay relaxed. Stage 6, wow, now I understand almost like it's a weirdly accented English, but I don't get cocky because it'll turn back into a fog in a second. Stage 7, a new exciting development. I'm beginning to forget what language it is, especially if the people are regularly switching back to English. Very cool. Stage 8, I understand basically everything, but when a person's name is said, I feel bad for missing that. I'm relieved when the mystery word turns out to be a person's name. Stage 9 through 10, I'm cruising along pretty well now. I'm not translating anymore. My brain is 100% in the language. English sounds weird when it's suddenly spoken. Even when I don't think I understand, I realize that there are images popping up in my mind. Later, I realized that I did understand. This is what Connie Warner shared with me. I just want to emphasize what she said at the beginning. She said that listening comprehension can fluctuate with the same speaker and it can go to different stages. And this is what she wrote to me after going to a Portuguese church for over a year. And so I don't think you should have that expectation that if you go to a church in your target language or an immersive activity that your experience is going to be very linear, that you're going to go from stage 0 to stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, and you will never go back to another stage. It's going to fluctuate. But one of the most important things in order to have permanent progress in your language learning marathon is to show up for practice. My name is Franklin, and this is first1000hours.com. There was a point when I went to a Spanish church and I was sitting down with natives that I didn't know what they were saying, but I stayed at that table. I didn't get up. I remembered Connie Warner's stages of listening comprehension, and that really helped me. And I want to share with you that story right now. And so then I sat at a table and I was with 4 other people. There were 3 men, I believe, and then a lady, and they were just talking. Hey, language learning lover, nice to see you here as well. And so these 4 people were just talking in Spanish, and I really like that because number one, it's nice to be in an environment where there's a lot of people that are like native Spanish speakers they are talking, because more likely what they're going to do is they're going to speak in their native tongue. But if you have people like one person and they know English and all this, they're more likely to speak to you in English. So I wanted to put myself in that environment where I could just listen to Spanish. And so that's what I did. I feel like when I go to a Spanish church, I'm at a university. I'm not just somewhere where it's a Spanish church. I'm there to learn. And so when I was listening to these people speak for about 10 to 15 minutes, I really didn't understand what they were saying, to be very honest with you. I listened to them and I heard some words here and there, but it was a little bit challenging and difficult. But guess what? I sat down at that seat. I didn't say, okay, well, it's time for me to give up. I'm going to go home now. I'm just going to start crying or something like that. I don't really cry, but I just sat down. And so one of the things that happened to me when I actually talked is someone asked me something like como, and he said something else. He didn't say como estás, because I would know what he said. I would know what that meant, but he said something else. So I just asked him to repeat that in Spanish, and then I found out, okay, what he's asking me is como estás, basically, or how I'm doing. And then I said bien, and then I was still trying to pay attention to what people are saying. And so there's someone else that came up to me as I was at this table with these Spanish speaking people, and he asked me, hey, do you understand what's being said? And I said, más o menos, I understand some things, but I probably understand, I think I said maybe half or something like that, but I said I didn't understand everything. And so another person said something, and this is all in Spanish, by the way, but they were saying that maybe, are we speaking too fast for you or something like that? I didn't really respond to that question, but I just said, I'm here to learn. This is my university. And I said all this in Spanish as well to them. So then there came a change in this conversation, because I started to understand a lot more of what people were saying. Now, this is when the conversation drifted or changed, and then someone started just speaking to me. The person did not slow down his speech. He just started talking to me. And so we were just talking about life and different things like that. I'm not going to go into the details of the conversation, but we were just talking about life and Christian life and other things like that. And then I understood probably around 80% or more of what was being said. I'd probably say about 80%. And so I could follow along in the conversation. And I want to say that listening is so important, because I didn't just speak all the time. I was not dominating the conversation. A natural conversation is when you can respond to someone else, and you have to take time to listen. And so sometimes this person would be speaking to me, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes or something like that before I'm responding. And so if I did not focus on listening comprehension, and if the Lord has, just not helped me, if I didn't increase in my skills in that area, then I would really be lost in that conversation. But then he just talked, and then I responded, and then there was someone else that was still at that table, and so then he would speak to me as well, and I got to learn a lot more about him as well. And then they would ask me my opinion on what they had just related. And so I was thankful that I just didn't give up, and that I just didn't spend those 10 to 15 minutes and then just say I got to leave. And, eventually my propusa came and all of that. And so I was able to get that. And at one point in this time, someone was asking, I was looking for a fork. I did not have a fork to use, to eat with my pupusa. And so someone had said something like, hey, where's the fork? And then the person said, hey, there's no fork or whatever. And I just laughed, but I could understand what they were saying. And so I was able to go to that Spanish church and be there in that gymnasium for, I think I got there around maybe 7:12, and then I left around maybe 8:54. So I had a lot of time to interact with these natives. I think a follow-up to that video is that now I am regularly in all Spanish Zoom meetings from a Seventh-day Adventist church in Costa Rica, and I'm able to interact with these Spanish speakers, these native Spanish speakers, and I'm getting more and more comfortable doing that and more comfortable being in an all Spanish environment. But I like challenges, and I'm so glad that I've put myself in challenges. I hope this video has been really encouraging to you. And I just try to be authentic on this channel. I want to share with you my honest experience. My experience is not without trials. I don't think yours will be as well. And if you want to know a little bit more about how I try to keep it real here on this channel, I want to share with you a video about why I don't want to be a polyglot. And that will make a lot more sense after you watch that video. So please go and watch that video. And there's a video that YouTube recommends, and I hope to see you in the next video.